Hello, and welcome to the Student Experience podcast, where we'll be chatting to members of the University of Suffolk community, giving them the opportunity to share their experience with us. I'm Sam, and I'm a member of the Student Experience and Engagement team, and in today's episode we are joined by Kerri Stevenson, who's the Postgraduate Academic Coordinator, and Laura May, who is a PhD student. We discussed Laura's journey as a PhD student so far, and the support the university provides to PhD candidates. So, Kerri and Laura, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Kerri Stevenson and I'm the PGR Academic Coordinator in the Suffolk Doctoral College.
Hello, I'm Laura May. I'm a PhD student doing creative writing.
Brilliant. So, Laura, would you like to talk a little bit more about your research project?
So I applied to the University of Suffolk last year to do a PhD. I did my degree a very long time ago and never thought I'd study again, really. I was never particularly academic. I just kind of went to uni because I was the first in my family to go and my parents were very insistent. And then as I got older, I realised I wanted to learn more, so I went and did my master's. And then I promised myself I would never do a PhD because that was very stressful. And then I couldn't resist. And when I was looking at universities, I really wanted somewhere that had a doctoral college that was supportive. When I did my master's, I was at a different university, and it was lovely, but there wasn't a lot of one-to-one support. And I found the campus a bit overwhelming. I didn't quite know where to go. There was quite a high staff turnover there as well, which I think is quite common.
Yeah, it can be.
But I loved the kind of the stability of Suffolk, and I came to visit and just fell in love with the marina and the buildings and staff.
We are very lucky location-wise where the campus is situated, so yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a bit about your research project?
Sure. So I am doing a practice-based PhD. So at the end of it, I will have a collection of poetry because I'm doing creative writing, and I will also have a kind of critical essay to explain how I've approached that poetry. As someone who writes, doing something practical is a lot easier for me than necessarily doing a big thesis. Yeah. I'd much prefer to do something creative. And I think the beauty of doing it here is there's so many creative writers working here.
Yes, there is a big lot. It's such a positive, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just means you know that you can go somewhere with it.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's a big emphasis on introducing you to the right people within the publishing industry and getting you to where you want to be with your own writing. So that was very important to me.
It sounds like there's some really good networking opportunities there, and like you said, you've got other people you can bounce off with ideas and things as well, outside of the immediate team. So
yeah, so the doctoral college runs there's the creative writing cafe. We meet about once a month, and we go for coffee, and we all talk about what we're writing on, exchange ideas. Incredible. And then we have professional development days, again normally about once a month. And they're about various different topics. So it could be, how to survive your PhD, or, being stuck on your own writing. How do you deal with those things? But it helps you connect with other students so that you're not alone, because it can be a bit lonely. So it's nice to have that community.
Yeah. Well, that sounds really positive. It sounds like you've got, like you say, a good community behind you, and you've got lots of people to sort of talk to about different aspects of what you're doing as well.
So how have you found supervision, for instance, then? Because you'll have had a supervision team created for you. So when you came for your interview, the team was already in place. Yes, she's nodding.
Yes, it was. Yes.
And that's what goes on in the background. So when the person applies, it's not just a case of looking over their research proposal. They put the team together, so the school looks at who's got interest, academic ability and availability, so that on your interview day, the people that interview are your team, which is pretty good, I would have thought, and they're with you sort of every step of the way.
Yes, yeah, I think everyone says to you who's already done a PhD, your peers, they say to you, your supervisor's the most important person in your life, probably more than your partner during those 3 or 4 years. You probably spend more time with them. And I think the Suffolk Doctoral College just got it spot on for me. They really did. And I'm a little bit of a challenge, because it's always nice to be a bit of a challenge, isn't it? In that I'm doing poetry, which is not a normal creative writing PhD, and it can be harder to assess. So they really kind of cherry-picked amazing supervisors for me. So I have two who both work here, and I see them quite regularly. But my main supervisor I meet every week, virtually, and often in person as well. And that person supervises lots of people at lots of universities around the country. So it's really about getting the right person for you. And the work that I'm doing is ekphrastic poetry, so it's poetry based on an image. So I use an image as an inspiration for the poem.
Wow.
So my supervisor, Dr. Nicola Foster, she has amazing art, philosophy, photography, all the things I need to get the best from the image. So it couldn't have been better chosen, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
She's amazing, she is. And it's really helpful when you've got more than one supervisor, because they give you a slightly different perspective and make you think a little bit about different ways of approaching stuff, which is really helpful.
Oh, that's really good. That's a really good way of putting it, because sometimes it could be, if they've got totally differing views, that could be, but like you just said, actually they make you see it from both different angles, and that gives you more of an overview and oversight of things. So that's really good.
Hopefully they complement each other.
They do, they really do, yeah. And all of them have been like, shall we just go for a coffee as well? Like, we don't have to do a supervision, we can just get to know each other, because that's really helpful too, which I think is very important. And I think, it can be difficult if you think that they're all kind of coming from a different angle, but the first thing that I was told when I started was that I don't have to know the answer. That's the point of a PhD, is you don't know the answer. It's a learning journey. It sounds a little bit trite, doesn't it? But you know what I mean. And you really are genuinely encouraged to ask the questions about what you're doing, and you have to have all the answers, which is a lovely way of working, I think. It's nice.
Yeah, it's like you said, for most, I suppose, an outside perspective would be you have to go into a PhD knowing everything. That's what you think it looks like until you get the information. No, absolutely not. You're going into it to discover more about something. Like you said, it is a journey.
I mean, if anything, I did more work before I started the PhD than after I was accepted. Okay. I worked with the supervisor on my proposal for a few months.
Oh, wow.
And that's before I'm even accepted into the university, and I've started, but it was really about kind of what do you want and what do we need to get this through.
I think you've made a really good point, actually, because research proposals are submitted along with the application form, and some people, bang, straight in, they know exactly what they're doing, what they're writing, and submit. But for the majority of students, they need a little bit of help to tease that story out. What is it you're trying to do? And actually, when you think about what you're trying to do, it goes off in all sorts of directions.
Yes.
And then there's somebody there that goes, just rein it in a little bit, or focus, where's your focus going to be? And we have so many students who work with our supervisors before they commit to applying. And it's great that we can offer that, and we want to offer it because we want you to do the best that you can do and be the best that you can be. So it's really important to us that students have that opportunity, that they can come in and speak with somebody first. I think that's the beauty of Suffolk, is that they have that personal approach. So that I felt like I was being heard right from the minute I contacted the university. And I was by far from perfect in terms of my proposal. I have never written a PhD proposal. I've spent my life working, not studying, just even the world of academia is a bit foreign to me, and just the language is a little bit strange. So just understanding what a form means, or really the things that you think, well, I could do that, but it's very different. It's a different world, and it's nice to be welcomed into that world and not feel like you're going in and you don't know anything.
It sounds it. I mean, you're talking about it with such passion as well. So it's obviously something that's really ignited your love of wanting to learn and find out more. So it's obviously such a great experience for you at the moment as well.
Yes.
hopefully you're still saying that further down the
Do
line.
you know what, it feels like a world away from my masters. I really struggled during my masters. I found I did a literature masters and I did a creative writing elective for my dissertation, and so I still had all that, but I still felt like I was in this in between. Like there was a bit of structure but not enough, but then I wanted more, and it's just an odd place being in a masters, I think, whereas a PhD is, if you don't love it, you're not going to get through 3 years of living with it. So
do you think there's a freedom in doing your own research? Is that what you're experiencing?
Yes. I'd never heard of a practice-based PhD. I couldn't believe I was allowed to write for fun and pleasure, and then at the end I get to have a PhD. I just couldn't believe it. So, and also to be surrounded by such talented writers while you're doing it, that's a rare opportunity to have. So, yeah, I feel very lucky to be here.
Yeah. So what are sort of key differences then between practice PhD and more traditional kind of PhD?
I think the difference is for me it's qualitative rather than quantitative. So I don't have to come up with a research proposal, get all the approval, carry out the research and then write up my findings. That's a traditional type of kind of sciencey type based PhD. Instead, I have to research what I would like to write about and then write creatively, and I'm assessed on that creative writing. Wow. So it can be hard to assess creative writing. It's a little bit, it's not very objective, but that's where they come up with a panel of assessors that writes or writes poetry or is in that field. And interestingly, one of my master's lecturers, who I did a poetry thing kind of module with, said, if you need an assessor at the end, I'm happy to get people to, it's really just networking across the different unis and getting the right people in. But instead of posing a question and then trying to answer it, I'm answering the question and at the end I'll have something. I don't know, that's how it feels to me. That sounds a little bit gobbledy, sorry.
No,
but, I get to actually physically do something, which is right. And I think it's quite a risk for a university to support someone in a practice-based PhD, especially creative, because you can't just write because it's Monday and it's 9 a.m. It comes when it comes, so it can take a while to get going. And
say, how did that process work?
you don't sit and write 9 to 5. That's not how creative processes work, I don't think. But I have actually done a bit of writing so far since I started, and my supervisor's been amazing. She's like, I know it comes when it comes. So, if I give you this deadline, you can try and figure out how to work back from it. So that works really well for me because I know I want to get something in, but I don't have to write it in a constructed way because I don't write that way.
No.
So, but she recognises the creative process,
and that, like you say, it's different from going from A to B, but you still got a degree of structure from what you've just said. But at the same time, like you said, you need to have the inspiration. You need to have the moment, and then you can quickly, not quickly, but you can write it and things.
So at supervision, they talk to you, don't they, about milestones for next time. So although you're seeing them every 4 to 6 weeks. Or weekly.
Yes.
I imagine you do literary reviews. Do you do any sort of things like that? And
yes.
So by the time you go to your next one, you'll have already discussed what you're going to be discussing at your next one when you've reached that part. Is that how it works? We have a PhD reading group that meets every week on Zoom, and it's various different literature and arts, practice-based PhD students, and we normally talk about theory. So that could be psychoanalytic theory, feminist theory, whatever kind of literary theory that we're interested in. And that gives us an opportunity to develop that literature review and add knowledge base. I think it's more structured than I feel it is because they know what they're doing. Do you know what I mean? And I just rock up with my poem. Because you love it so much, you're probably just falling into a pattern that they've set without you quite even realising.
Yes, it works
Very
really
clever.
well. It works really well, yeah.
It's like you say, when you enjoy something, it doesn't feel like a chore, does it? It doesn't feel like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? It's actually like, oh, I really want to do this. I'm really enjoying this process. So
I'm surprised how much I'm enjoying it. After my masters, I was nearly broken. I was like, it was hard, and I think COVID didn't help. I was studying during COVID. That's always challenging.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think there's a lot in place here that means it works seamlessly.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see any messy end of it. I see great supervision, structured kind of opportunities to meet other students, great personal development. I see all that bit. So that's how it should be, I suppose.
Yeah,
that's great. I mean, that's the intention. So that's great that you are experiencing what, the team work really hard to help you to be that way. I mean, it's interesting you're saying about that. It doesn't sound like you feel alone in any of this. You've always got somebody to speak to. I love the fact that you've got Zoom groups that you can bounce theories off each other and, like I say, the literary review and things.
Yeah, it's really nice. I came to a conference at the Hold that they're in conversation with ghosts.
Yes, I've heard some very good things about that.
It was excellent. And it was great because I walked in, everyone was like, oh, hi, we've never met, but we all know each other because we've all had these groups together and we've all been to stuff together. So it's, and kind of like, I know it sounds strange, but I'm terrible with names, but I'll be like, okay, that's the one who's writing the historical novel, and that's the one who's writing this autobiographical fiction based in the 70s. That's you know what people are writing, and that's really lovely. Like, and I've had a few people go, "Oh, you're the poetry woman, aren't you?" I'm like,
wow. So you're normally on the top right of my screen. So
it's quite nice.
Sounds like some really great things are being covered. Really interesting
community.
Topics. Yeah, definitely.
I don't think that's by accident though.
Doesn't sound
that's
that way.
hard to achieve a community, really hard, especially so quickly. I only joined in October 2023, so I'm only kind of 6 months in, and to feel part of something that quickly is hard to do. So it's been done well. Yeah.
So you've created your own sort of community, really, and like I said, your sense of belonging fills in there, really. So that's great.
We also have a social coordinator, Hazel, in our
she's
team.
Brilliant.
Hazel's role is really to make sure that new students feel welcomed. She offers them an individual induction, so it's not a mass group in a room. It's just individuals. She'll take you for a coffee, I think.
She did take me for a coffee.
And just sort of go through the handbook a little bit with you, the systems, because obviously it's all new and looks quite strange. She'll take you to student life, so if you do have problems, you can go to student. You know where to go if you need to. But one of the things that Hazel does as well is she does social events, so takes people out for cream teas. I go on those ones. I'm absolutely needed. I'm really needed on those ones. She's done picnic in the park. She does regularly pizza in the PhD room as a dedicated space for PhD students. And it's all because we know it's a lonely journey, isn't it? It's only you doing your research.
Yes.
There's nobody else doing it.
Yes.
And as much as everyone around you can feel what you're going through, sometimes you just need that little bit of extra support, more than you would do in an undergraduate. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
I agree, and I was blown away when I met Hazel. I couldn't believe I had like a personal tour of the university. I just couldn't believe it. And I think I said to her, I don't do this for everyone. She went, yeah, we do. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah, definitely.
And just to pick up on that kind of signposting, I live with a mental health condition called a borderline personality disorder, which means I experience really bad mental health at times. And Hazel signposted me to all the student support services and everything I might need. Yeah. And I kind of don't need it because I now know it's there.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Really, I felt that was really helpful for me, and I didn't feel like I couldn't mention my mental health.
Yeah, it's definitely a big thing about the university is breaking down those barriers to students, making sure they are treated as an individual. And like you said, you might not necessarily need the services, but just know actually if I'm having one of those days where I really need to reach out, that you know where they are, you can just go and make an appointment and see them and things. That's amazing.
And I think all of the staff that I've met have had that kind of open way. When I met my supervisor for the first time, my main supervisor, she said, I just want to know a little bit about you and where you're coming from, because otherwise I can't be there for you. So I felt really, it's quite a safe space.
Yeah, that's great.
Which is great. So
it's definitely important for anyone, isn't it? Knowing where that safe space is and actually feeling, and it's not just someone saying I'm a safe space, you actually feel it. It's like, but I think the individual's aspect is fantastic. That's really unique. That's a great sort of point to get new students in the door for they're doing a PhD as well, knowing that could be their experience.
I would say, it's for a severe and enduring mental health condition, it's hard to do anything, let alone study, let alone study at that the highest level. But it can be done.
Yes,
if you've got the right team around you, you can totally do it. And I think that's the difference between people with severe health conditions doing university or not. And it's quite... the reason I first looked at Suffolk is my sister was studying here.
Oh, wow.
And she'd had such amazing experience doing a BA. And she said, the pastoral care is second to none. I was like, really? That's quite unusual.
Wow.
I've never, it's not normally that good, but... It's great recommendations of this place before I came. So.
Yeah, we were going to say what kind of drew you to here. I know you sort of said things like obviously the campus, the waterfront, and places like that, and obviously you said your sister's word of mouth recommendation. But is anything else in particular brought you to here?
I think the kind of track record of the literature department, these are amazing writers. But I came a couple of times with my sister while she was studying, just had a look around. I was like, I love this place, it's really beautiful. She was like, I know, have you been to that coffee shop? Or that? I was like, I know, I could be a student here, But I wanted a personal touch. I wanted that approach. And I didn't want to sit for 3 years somewhere I didn't feel wanted, I suppose.
No, of course.
And then when I sent a kind of my initial inquiry, it was like boom, 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 boom. I was like, oh wow, they want me. This is amazing. So it was really positive,
Oh, that's great.
Do you think your sister will do a PhD? I'm always recruiting. Always recruiting.
If she finishes a degree, she might.
Because
but I mean,
you don't need the masters to do a PhD.
Yes,
do tell your sister that.
She's slightly different to me. She's trying to be a midwife, not equally creative, but in a different way.
Very different, but
But interestingly, I mean, she's had various experiences and needed support, and it's been brilliant. So,
that's great.
I think you need a consistent approach. It can't just be one person that gets a great approach. You all have to get it. And I remember when I wrote my proposal, I think it was Amanda said, do you want to talk to another PhD student and ask them to read your proposal? And they did.
Wow.
They gave me feedback. And then I got to return the favour when I got to see some of their work when I'd actually joined. But that's, another PhD student going out of their way to give you feedback. It's amazing. Just shows you what the feel is, So.
Yeah, that is really great. It's like you say, it's kind of somebody else going out of their way to support you, and you've got their back, and vice versa, and kind of saying, look, this is what I'm writing. You might be writing something completely different, but are we, getting the same experiences?
Yes.
And,
yeah. Hopefully you've built relationships for life then. Do you feel like you might have done that? Sort of feel that you'll always know these people? And
I think for some of them, definitely. For my supervisors, definitely.
Yeah.
Everyone's just so excited and happy for you that you're being creative, and I mean, we had a professional development day the other day, and we all got to stand up and talk about our work in 3 minutes, which is really hard to do. Actually, we were timed; it was quite scary, and I had a bit of time left, and they asked me to read a poem, so I got to, and I was like, I feel like I'm at school. This is but afterwards it was like, I really like that bit, or maybe that it was they listened.
That really constructive, like say, peer.
It's a community, I hope I will stay in touch. I mean, it's early days, obviously, but
Yeah.
I hope I will stay in touch with them. And I can't wait to read all of their books. More importantly, when they finish their PhDs, hopefully they'll go on to publish.
I think from the sounds of it, you probably will stay in touch.
Yeah.
I remember I graduated about 3 years ago, and I'm still in touch with pretty much everybody in my cohort because we all went through COVID together in the last year, and that stuff bonds you, you know, for life. So yeah, but it sounds like you've met some amazing people, so it would be good
Some
if you
very
could stay in
talented
touch.
writers.
And yeah,
I think you can kind of judge the quality of a university by the work that's being produced. I assume that's why they exist, you know. So, but when I've read the work of other people on the course, I'm like, these guys are good writers. I feel like they're producing really important things, which means hopefully I'm at the same level, you know. So you feel like, you know, this is good work coming out at the end. You don't always get that, so it's nice to read. Yeah.
So, I mean, a challenge that students have, not just undergrad, but postgrad as well, and PhD level, is you spend so much time studying and working on your projects, but also outside that you've got a life as well. So how do you find that balance?
I'm quite new, so I'm still okay. So I work 4 days a week in my job, and then I have like a day off a week for uni. That's not how a PhD works. You know, I am extremely fortunate that my employer is really supportive. So they let me have any day off a week I want. So if I want to come in on a Tuesday, I can. If I want, you know, if there's an event, I can try and make it. They're really great. They let me have extra study time if I want it, but I haven't needed it so far. And they are genuinely flexible in the sense that if I want to come to something at 10 a.m, I can just start work at 11. You know, and that's a really great employer. You know, that supports me through it. Because the happier I am, the better I'll be as an employee.
Yeah,
so.
which all employers thought like that, didn't you? Really, like you said, you know, it's in their best interest to keep you in the job. So
happy staff, happy life. There we go. But yeah, so I'm really lucky in that sense. But I think if I wasn't doing poetry, I may struggle more. Poetry is, well, for me, it's very bitty. So I have a notebook on me. I write down words all day, every day as I think of them. But I don't sit and work for hours on end in a, you know, so I can really fit it around my life. But I think if I was writing a novel, and I have written a novel before, and I had to take 6 months off work, that's what I had to do to get that finished.
Wow.
There was no way that was going to be finished if I didn't. So that was a very different way of structuring my writing. So I think I've got a good way of doing it because I'm in poetry. I've been a bit lucky, I think. But if I was writing something different, I'm not sure I could work as much as I do.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think you can work part-time. I think it's good to have time away from it.
I think financially,
Yeah.
you reach a stage in your life when you're doing your PhD and you're that bit older, you've got more life commitments, and it would be unusual for a PhD student not to work.
Yes.
That's how it looks from the doctoral college's point of view. Students often will ask questions, oh, I've got a job and I want to carry on working, is it possible? And it is always possible, as you've just said, to fit it around life and family commitments.
Yes.
So it is possible and completely understandable, and we accept 100% that students who are doing PhDs do need to work. Because you've probably got a mortgage, and you know, we've all got bills to pay.
Yes.
And the older you get, the more there are of them.
Yeah.
So you do need to work, and we completely understand that.
Yeah. I think if you just communicate well with whoever's supporting you, they'll, you know, my supervisor Nicola will often say, look, I know you can't be on campus every day, so how about we do this instead, or let's do that instead, or, you know, and quite often the people that you're working with and the people supporting you have also got lives that they're juggling, so we're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
But I definitely wouldn't, I'd say don't let it put you off, that fear of juggling it.
Yeah.
I think it's worth it. I mean, obviously that's why I started doing
Yeah.
PhD. But you just have to be ready, I suppose.
Yeah.
I graduated a few years ago from my master's, and before that I hadn't studied for like 15 years. You know, it was a real shock to the system. But I still waited a couple of years to think about a PhD.
That's the thing, isn't it? I don't know many people who just jump from one thing straight away into the next thing. You always have to have that time to just
Just process and digest.
Process,
and,
like,
yeah.
I've done this. This was a huge part of my life for 2, 3, 4 years onwards. So sometimes you think, actually, I want to have a bit of a life back and see what life looks like outside of the university, and then you're like, actually, I really miss it. I don't want to go back in again. Or there might have been something, like you said, that came up on your masters or even your undergrad. Oh, I want to explore that more, but without so many restrictions around it. So,
well, it was a module in my masters that inspired my PhD proposal. So I did avant-garde poetry module, which if you haven't heard of avant-garde poetry, I didn't realise how much I needed it in my life, but I totally do. It's brilliant. And my entire proposal was based on that module almost. So definitely go back and see what you enjoyed and what you did. One thing I did was I kind of like recruited all my friends and family into this PhD, so they all know what I'm doing. Like they're all like they're supportive, so that I can say to them, "It's a uni day, guys. It's not happening," you know. And they're really respectful of that. And I will quite often email myself ideas.
That's a great idea.
And my partner will say to me, I think you need to email that to yourself. You know, it's like, you know, it's become part of our life.
Understand how you work.
Yeah, it's part of our life. It's a big part of our life, and it's going to be an even bigger part of mine. So everyone's really supportive. I think you just have to tell everyone what you're doing and set some boundaries, maybe.
I think my partner knew more about my dissertation than I did. The amount of things I read. So can you read that bit again? I was like, right, okay. So.
But it's funny though, because you know, you don't realise people are listening sometimes, and then you know, a friend will say, "I saw this article and thought of your thing," or you know, my mum will be like, "Did you see that on the news?" It's like, so people do think of you. And
they
people
want
are really
to succeed, you know.
Of course they do. They want you to do it.
That's great. It's good that it sounds like you've got the support system outside as well as inside. So that's really good.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have children, so that is what I do have 3 dogs. That's almost as well. You know, that's
you better behave though, won't they?
They are definitely better behaved. Yeah. I mean, I think that might be a different consideration. If I had children, I would probably do a part-time PhD. Yeah. But because I don't, I felt I could do a full-time and work. So
how long does a full-time PhD take as a matter of interest? How many years is that?
Well, it's the 3-year plus 1 write-up year model that we work to. So you've got 3 years. You're probably writing things within those 3 years. Yeah. But that final year allows you to polish what you're doing.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I didn't realise there was a write-up year at the end. I was like, oh my God, I got a whole year to do it. Like I was just, so, but I think, sorry.
I was going to say, if you wanted to do it part-time, it would have been 6 years plus 1 year. So it is 7 years versus the 4 years, depending on which way you want to do it.
I think, if I was in a different circumstance in life, I might do the part-time, but I think it doesn't matter how long, I mean, whether you're with it for a year or 6 years, I think it's a hard slog. Yeah. So, and I don't think anyone does a PhD because they have to. Like, it's a labour of love normally. Yeah. So, I think it's a good time. It's a good way. It's a good amount of time to get to the level of expertise you need to be able to get your doctorate, basically.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And you can use the dog excuse. Dog ate my homework. If you've not finished something, I'm really sorry. It's
the dog.
I think so. When people start courses, whether it be undergrad, postgrad, PhD, I think they go into it with an idea of what it might look like. So I know you only started in October, but is there anything that surprised you that you didn't necessarily foresee?
I'm surprised how. The irony that I'm doing literature, I'm surprised how much I have to read. And something I hear this almost on a weekly basis from people. Read around your subject. Mm-hmm. That comes up constantly, and I'm fascinated by how much I have to read around my subject. You know, I'm writing a collection of poetry, but what that poetry is various things. So I have to have the technical knowledge behind all of that, or the theory, and I'm fascinated about what I'm reading. I'm like, I never expected to be reading a book about photography because I'm writing a collection of poetry, but I'm using images, so it's important I understand photography and the evolution of photography. Oh, wow. So reading around your subject. I'm quite surprised how much I've had to do, but I'm loving it. And I thought, I mean, everyone starts at different times. You know, you can enrol. It's an ongoing enrolment, isn't it?
It is. It's a monthly enrolment. Students can start on the first day of each month.
So everyone's kind of starting at different times and finishing at different times. I don't know how you manage it.
No, I was just thinking, how does that work?
Yep.
But that's quite nice because every week there might be someone new coming in with new fresh ideas and, you know, or someone finishing up that we're all trying to get over the line together and like if you need us to help you read, whatever, you know. So I think that helps keep it really fresh in terms of what you're being exposed to. There's always different stuff. But yeah, I'm surprised how much I've read around my subject.
Yeah, I
but I'm
didn't think
loving
that
it.
Photography, that sounds really, like you said, you kind of started with one thing, and actually I need aspects of this to go forward with it.
It's because I'm doing ekphrastic poetry, so
which is something I've never heard of, so I feel like I'm learning things, you know.
So it's poetry that's inspired by an image.
Yes.
So if you think of, I don't know, it's been around for a long time and it's always happened, but there's kind of this idea that art and language are linked. So can you have one without the other? I don't know the answer, but can you help me know? So, and I'm not sure you can. When I see a piece of art, I use language to interpret it. But similarly, when I write something, you might see what I'm writing, you know. So it's kind of what's that relationship? And I'm using images or photographs of women to look at kind of the places that women are typically posed in, to kind of unpick gender structures and stereotypes. So I'm reading a lot about feminist theory, but also how that's evolved over the years and what that means and what does the word woman mean, and it's
really
very exciting.
Like, wow.
Yeah, loving it. But my supervisor keeps me on track.
Yeah,
it must be easy to go off on a tangent.
You know, I'm like, I managed to find a picture of a photo of a cat. No, right, come back quickly. You know, like. But she keeps me on track, and she has this like infinite knowledge of the art world, so I can say, oh, I saw this photo, yeah, that's by them, you know, and that's brilliant to have that brain as a resource. And I'm getting to see images I never would have been exposed to. So, you know, if I was just Google searching myself, it just wouldn't happen. But because you've got so many different brains that you can tap into.
It's like you say, you sort of start off looking at what you think, all right, this is what my idea of it is, but then when you're hearing other perspectives, like, oh my God, I never even thought to go down that route.
Yes.
And like you said, it sort of enriches what you've already got in place, really, doesn't it? So
yeah. You get to give it back as well. So I was chatting to a lady the other day who's writing a fictional novel, and the character is experiencing homelessness. So in my professional world, I'm a comms and engagement manager, and I work in health and social care marketing. So I work almost exclusively with charities. So I was able to go, okay, this charity did this around homelessness. They've just brought in this new law. They've just done this. So you can share your own knowledge from outside the world.
I was going to say, can you do that? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's nice. You can help others too.
Oh, that's great. It's really positive.
So, as I say, again, you've started in October. Is there anything about your project that, or your understanding of your sort of your idea that's changed since you started?
A little bit. It's evolved. So I started off saying I want to do. I want to explore women in photographs through poetry, and the various things that we assume about women when we see a photo of a woman. And that has evolved a bit. We were talking about, there was an exhibition at the Dulwich Gallery, or Dulwich Museum, called Women in the Window, which is a very common trope in art. You'll see lots of images through history of women staring out of windows lovingly or forlornly or, you know, religiously or whatever. And so we then were like, I was like, oh, I really like that phrase, woman in the window. I really, really like that. And it's kind of, okay, how do we play with the places? So now I'm looking more at place as well, and the places that women are in images and what makes it jarring. So there are places we expect to see women.
Yeah. Yes, I was about to say, I've got
yes.
1950s advertising has just popped in my head.
Yes,
So,
there's places we expect to see women. If you, I'm not suggesting you do it on a university computer, but if you Google erotic imagery, it's highly likely those images will be women.
Yeah.
There's various different ways that we look at women generally, and through that lens, there's various gazes.
Yeah.
But what happens if I move the place? What if I put that woman in a courtroom, or if I put her, as a judge or a policewoman or a firefighter, or how can I play with the place?
Combat, that kind of thing as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're looking at kind of a working title of putting women in their place.
That's
and
great.
playing on
I love that. That
Yeah.
sounds really interesting. I did gender for my dissertation, but I did gender in the early years. So what you're doing, I'm like, oh, can you? That was really, So yeah.
And the places we feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And the places that men don't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Dropping kids off to school or the nursery or being part of the mum group, or like, how do we play with those places a bit?
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm even reading about like architecture,
Wow.
and how that shapes a society. It's fascinating where you go, but you've always got your supervisor to keep you coming back,
Rein you in.
which is good.
Yeah.
So, if there's ever been any sort of challenges that you've faced so far that you thought, well, actually this is going to be a bit difficult, but then you've overcome them?
I think the only challenge I've had really is the distance. So it takes me about an hour to drive here, and then even longer if it's like traffic on the, not school run or something on the way home. But I was really worried about that. I thought that would just eat so much into my time and my and I love it. I love the drive. It's thinking time.
Yeah, definitely.
And it really makes it feel like when I come to university, it's my day. And I would quite often say to my friends and my family, it's uni day, don't contact me. I just want a day without my phone beeping, and it's the one day where I'm like, okay, I will not check work emails, and, I thought that would be really challenging, but it hasn't been, so that's been really good. I think the only other challenge really was kind of getting all the finances sorted. I have dyscalculia, so I'm really bad with numbers.
Same.
So understanding that.
Yeah.
And I really struggled when I first started to understand the student loan and how it would come in and stuff. But I worked with the finance team, and I contacted them and said, look, I'm really sorry, I don't actually understand what I'm supposed to do. And they set up a monthly payment plan for me.
Oh, incredible.
Problem solved.
Actually, that's open to all PhD students. Any student that wants to do a payment plan, they are more than welcome to.
Yeah, makes it a lot easier for someone like me who doesn't understand any of that. Yeah,
and it's manageable chunks as well, isn't it? It's expensive education when you're at this level as well. And like you say, there's the bills, and it just helps to make those payments a bit more manageable. And you've got a set amount going out each month.
So I get my student loan like every 3 months or something, but the monthly payment stays the same during kind of October to June. And it just means I'm not thinking about it every month going, oh my God, what's it supposed to be this month? It's a penny less or a penny, it's all just done for me. And the finance team were really helpful in getting that sorted. So,
in current climate, it's really important to know that these things are in place, that there's still, like we said, we want the barriers to be brought down. You don't want people to say, oh my God, I can't even consider that, it's too expensive, or I have no idea how I could do that and work it out. And
I didn't realise I could get a student loan for my PhD, but you can get a student loan for your PhD. I genuinely think if you want to study, there's always funding. And the university is really good at sending out like announcements about what's funding coming up. So I've just applied for something with Santander to go on a course around understanding like systemic racism. So it's nothing to do with what I'm studying, but it might come in and it's useful and it's all learning. So you can do, there's lots of access to stuff you can, that's good.
Great.
I would say the only challenge which I still haven't got over is kind of how short notice things can be. So it's like, oh, we're doing this next Monday, and it's constantly changing, and I find I check out a bit from that. So, but then I think I'd be very different if I was an undergrad and I wanted the social side,
That's the thing, isn't it? We do find the social aspect here is a real juggle. Everyone wants something different. It has to be very individually tailored, and like I said, people have outside commitments. So
So I like to be booked up like 3 years in advance, and I think I'm just one of those people.
Yeah,
Mostly because it takes time to get time off work and stuff, you just want to juggle. But I think a lot of that is just me opening my email. It's not always short notice.
So is there a particular moment in your journey so far that you're most proud of?
I think getting up and reading a poem, I was quite proud of that. I wasn't expecting it, so I was a little bit like, what? You want me to do what? What? But I was really proud I shared some work. And I got my first kind of draft of it was only about 6 poems. We'd taken some images from that Women in the Window, actually, that exhibition. And I just got the image, so I haven't read anything about them, and I've written a poem. And now I'm going to read about the image and rewrite the poem and see the difference. And I put my first lot in, and I was terrified. I was just like, what if I'm not actually a writer and I can't do this? And you just, I think it's so personal when it's practice-based, because you're basically saying, this is me, am I good enough? It's really difficult.
You're sharing something you're really interested and passionate about, but I know, you like you said, you can say, is anyone else going to find this interesting or relevant? But I
think imposter syndrome features quite heavily in PhD. People think, I'm not intelligent enough to do that. And it's breaking down those barriers to say, actually, you can do it. And with support and guidance, it's possible. But a big challenge for people to overcome, actually.
Yeah, I think that imposter syndrome comes in for everyone I've met said they've had that. And I think the further you go in education, the worse it gets. If someone would have said to me when I was younger that I would do a PhD, I would have just laughed in my face. I grew up in a working class, council estate, first one in my family to go to uni. The only reason I didn't end up somewhere else was because my mum just pushed and and I wasn't allowed to hang out on the weekend and I wasn't allowed to do any of that, and I thank you for it now, but my journey could have been very, very different if I hadn't had the support around me. But I think if I can do a PhD, anyone can do a PhD,
That leads nicely into what advice would you give students who may be considering applying for a PhD here, or if they're not sure it's for them? Like you just said, you never thought that would be something on your remit, but clearly it's something you're absolutely loving at the moment.
I'm really pleased. I started it, I'm really pleased. I feel like I can finish it. That's always a fear, isn't it? Like you're like, well, can I actually commit for something that long? But my advice would be to apply and see how you get on. And try not to have too fixed an idea of where it's going to go. But I would say use the university, use the resources, the expertise during your application, because you will get support if you ask for it, like every single step, and that is just worth its weight in gold. But I think the worst thing that someone can do is say no. That feels terrible, but it's not, because I put in an application and it wasn't me, and I met with a couple of staff and they said, we're not hearing your voice here, what do you want to do? And I completely changed my proposal. So I got a no, and I'm still doing a PhD.
That's great.
So I would say apply. Definitely.
That is really good advice, definitely.
What about in terms of advice you'd give to yourself when you look back on your first day, when you first started?
I haven't been here that long, so
breathe, maybe.
Just breathe. I'm still not quite maybe this is a bit of that imposter syndrome. I'm still not comfortable always sharing my opinion, not because of anyone around me, but because I don't want to get it wrong. And part of the supervision is about believing in your own opinion and building your confidence so that you can disagree or have a different view. And that's hard to do sometimes because we're people pleasing naturally, aren't we? So, but it makes you really think about what do you believe in? What do you think is right or wrong? And
it's a great thing about a university space, isn't it? It's very much based on, you've done all the other things, but now is your time to really get out there with your opinions and your thoughts.
Yeah.
Find the research that backs it up and things that argue. You want to challenge it. You don't just want to go through things saying everyone's agreed with everything I've said. You kind of want to say, actually, this point of view has really challenged what I thought. And
yes.
I think that's the really big thing to take out of university, really, isn't it? But,
and you can't know it all on your first day,
no.
can you? So just go in and enjoy it and soak it up. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I mean, you've only just started your journey as a PhD student, but have you got any plans once you graduate? What are your...
Finish the PhD, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm really lucky. I write for a living. So I work in communications and engagement, so I get to write, which is lovely, but I'd love to write more creatively in the future. So I would really like to reduce my work and increase my creative time. Whether that looks like teaching or maybe writing a novel or whatever it is, I would like to be in that space more. I really came into the PhD without an idea. It sounds a little bit bizarre, but it doesn't make any difference to my career. I have a career. I've built a career. I'm coming in a lot older, so I think that helps me in that I'm not hanging a career on a PhD. And I don't need this, I just want it. So it makes it a lot easier for me, I think. Whereas other people I've spoken to who are doing their PhD, they're really keen to get into a certain career or do certain things, and I think it becomes much more important for them. But I'm probably not the right person to ask about that. Because I'm good on that side. I just want to enjoy it, really.
I think that's a really great way of putting it. Like you said, what you're studying took you in so many different directions from the sounds of it. So you're not just learning about one thing. You're kind of focusing on so many different aspects. So you've already said this time is for you. It's not for anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, already I was chatting to one of my supervisors. He said, "Oh, would you like some teaching experience?" And I was like, "What? I can't do that." She's like, "You can do that. You do know you can do that." I was like, "Oh my God!" And I forget that academia is a whole world that and I forget that. So it did open my eyes to the fact that I could go into academia and become a lecturer, which I think is why a lot of people might do it. So I think I'm kind of the wrong way around, sorry.
No, I can imagine you'd be a great lecturer. The passion you're speaking about what you're doing, and I think you've really engaged students. It's definitely something you should perhaps consider.
I'll try I'll do something. I like the experience.
Definitely.
I think it's so different though, because I think if you're doing your PhD, it should be something so close to your heart.
Definitely.
So I was chatting to someone at work saying I was going to come and do this podcast today. And they said, "Oh, weren't you doing a lecture the other day on this?" And I do loads of stuff about marketing and comms and because that's what I do for a living. But when it comes to poetry, it's like my baby. And I feel so vulnerable. So it feels like a whole new space, which is, but it's exciting.
That's great to hear.
No, that's really interesting. Really good conversation. I certainly learned a lot.
Yeah, me too. I'm like, I want to read this when it's done, kind of thing.
I'll write it.
So we have a final question on our podcast, which is what we call Answer One, Ask One. So what we'll do is you'll answer a question from our previous guests, and then you'll post one to our next guest. So our last podcast was with Disability and Mental Health Services, which is a really good podcast, and Megan Fisher posted the next question. So the question is, for a PhD student that's sort of just started their journey, have you got a best bit of wellbeing advice that you would give to them?
That's a really good question. You want to go first?
So obviously students come from all walks of life, and we totally accept that here, and I think we are a very understanding, inclusive university. I think we mentioned previously with Hazel when she does her induction, signposting, which is another really important part. It's all very well having services, but if students don't know about them or how to access them, And I think that's always got to be improved. You're always improving on what you're offering and how it is accessible. And I think we do it very well. And I'm hoping that our students feel that too. So
yeah, I definitely do. I feel like I've been really well supported in terms of my mental health and well-being.
That's great. That's really important.
Yeah. I think my top tip would be just for any stuff, like, again, you don't have to have the answer, you don't have to know what you need. You can just ask for some support and they'll work with you on the ideas for that. So it doesn't have to be, I need this, or I need an extra person to help me take notes. Or it doesn't always have to be a traditional bit of support.
Of course.
It can be something you've never even thought about.
Definitely.
I mean, as an example, recently I know that Hazel, we were aware of an international student sort of struggling a little bit, miles from home, and Hazel was running a stand for us the other week, and just invited the student to come and sit with her. It's just company, because the alternative was going back to her flat on her own, and just to come and sit and watch the world go by and chat about rubbish.
Yes.
Sometimes you just need that as well, don't you?
You do. You definitely, and that can be, the thing that makes the difference.
Definitely. I mean,
it
we
really
have
can.
similar. We have open door policy in our office, so we always try and say to students, you can come and talk to us at any time. You just need to check in about something. Or like you said, there's so many great services on campus, and that people might, like you said, not know about the non-traditional things. So it's a case of saying, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about speaking to this service for that reason? And there are other things to access other than the things that they normally would, if that makes sense. So, but it's just inviting that one person in who might not be feeling that sense of community just yet.
Yes.
Sounds like you've experienced it quite quickly, considering, like you said, you only started in October.
But I think it's half of it is just really good communication, in that, like, last week was Mental Health Awareness Week, and every day there was a whole load of stuff happening. I didn't go to any of it. I just liked it was happening. And I'm like, okay, they get it. They're doing stuff. It's not for me, but it's knowing it's happening. And, actually we're doing a campaign for this, or we're doing a campaign for that. And it's like, okay, this is an inclusive safe space. You can be any form of yourself here, and you're welcome. Definitely. So you don't always have to engage, but it's just knowing that the university takes it seriously.
Yeah, definitely. That's really good feedback for us to take in as well, actually. So
that's brilliant. So until next time, bye from Laura.
Goodbye.
It's goodbye from me. Goodbye. Thank you for listening to the Student Experience podcast. If you would like to be a future guest, email studentexperienceteam@uos.ac.uk or follow the links to our podcast application form through our Brightspace page. You can also reach out to us through our Instagram page, UOS_student experience.